name is Geraldine Gahi, and I'm going to be presenting for you today my capstone project to fulfill the requirements for the MSN program at WGU. The title of my project is Bridging the Gap, Health Information Exchange, and Effective Communication in Dialysis. I'll start by giving you an introduction to my capstone project. My project was to identify a gap in nursing education within the unit that I work. I am a dialysis nurse at DaVita Dialysis in El Cerrito, California. A little bit of background to better your understanding of where the gap is really coming from. DaVita Dialysis has many clinics all over the world. Just in the city alone, where DaVita Dialysis is my clinic, within a 5-mile radius, there are 4 clinics across that stretch. We serve a great population of patients who suffer from ESRD, end-stage renal disease, and we provide dialysis treatments for those who need it. Because of the number of patients we service every single day, the nurses in our clinic really need to have a wide variety of ways to communicate with patients and their families. They need to be able to recall the knowledge of the procedure when it comes to effective communication and communicating effectively with interdisciplinary team. And nurses also need to have the leadership skills to be able to communicate in a professional manner. In order to efficiently and effectively care for our patients, this is what nurses would need to be retrained on. Some of the steps to success are the interdisciplinary team suggesting developing a course geared towards effective communication and educating nursing staff about proper communication. The first thing we did was we had a meeting with the facility administrator, nurse educator, which is myself, and the medical director. We identify the gap as effective communication when it comes to interdisciplinary teams and communicating with patients and their families. We reviewed the literature, and then proposed a timeline of 6 weeks to complete the project for the course of effective communication. We also gathered several ways in where we could properly teach the course, and we came up with the flipped classroom style of teaching. And then we formulated a proposal rough draft. After the rough draft, we got the department approval. We met with the interdisciplinary team, and then we hosted a pilot course to nurses on effective communication. Evidence from the nursing literature is that the flipped classroom is an effective strategy for teaching. It gives nurses a chance to participate in a class that specifically targets the identified gap of effective communication. It increases the knowledge base of nurses regarding effective communication, and then it also produces positive outcomes with student knowledge and retention of information. The online and research portion of the class helps to increase knowledge base of nurses regarding the gap. So the flipped classroom style has two courses to it. It's the online in classroom, and then the simulation part of the class. So the first part with the in classroom, nurses spend time in class reviewing and recalling what they have gathered through research, and it helps them to retain information, share with other nurses what they have learned. Evidence shows that the flipped classroom style of teaching is widely used around the world, in medical schools, healthcare institutions, and widely used across the nation. Because of evidence-based practice regarding the flipped classroom and instruction in classroom, as well as simulation time. With all that, there has been a rise in the utilization of the flipped classroom. The next thing we did was created a lesson plan, which included the flipped classroom with the two classes, which is online and simulation, and then the effective communication skills challenge that the nurses would have to complete in order to be able to pass the course. So the topic, of course, is the flipped classroom, online in-class simulation, and then it is on effective communication, and the location will be at the DaVita dialysis unit where I work. And then the objectives will be at the end of the course, nurses should be able to explain principles of effective communication through various means. Nurses should be able to describe different influences on effective communication. They should be able to adapt to different patient assessments based on their communication styles. As you know, every individual has their own communication styles with which they're comfortable with, and they have to be able to adapt to those communication styles. Nurses also should be able to interpret different differences in communication styles. So the flipped classroom is composed of a two-part course, online and in class, as I stated earlier, so that students are given the chance to research effective communication and bring to the classroom setting for further discussion. And then with the simulation part of the course, we as a class, individually and as a class, simulate our findings. The subject, again, will focus on effective communication, and the setting will be at our dialysis center. So learning outcomes for the students, the outcomes that from the course that students take, they should be able to build and maintain healthy relationships between interdisciplinary team and patients through effective communication. They should also have the ability to communicate effectively in various settings and contexts. Nurses should be able to demonstrate knowledge of communication theory and apply that to the work setting. They should be able to demonstrate appropriate and professional ethical behavior when dealing with the interdisciplinary team as well as patients and their families. And they should be able to display competence in effective communication while keeping in mind the best standards of practice. So there are a total of 10 key concepts that we'll be talking about in the next slide. The experiential activity, which is a simulation lab, is based upon what I chose is a model sentence that nurses get to pick and bring to class. It could be any model sentence. They would gather this sentence during their working time on the treatment floor. And this is a simulation activity that nurses should be able to communicate using body language and form, which are two types of communication. The critical thinking activity. Nurses will be graded on their ability to communicate with other nurses and be able to pick up on cues, nonverbal communication cues. Okay. So the 10 key concepts are nurses must be able to exhibit proficient verbal communication. Nurses must be able to read communication. as well as write out what they are intending to communicate to others. May it be the interdisciplinary team or the patients and their families. Nurses must also be able to communicate with proper body language, and then electronic methods such as email, text, and other forms of electronic communication. In our setting, we usually deal with email and text. Nurses must be able to share some of the physiological influence that affect their ability to communicate, such as lifestyle and certain stressors that they may have, going on in their life. Some of the physiological influence that affect their ability to communicate, such as health, familial orientation, sex. Are you male, female? Males, females have different ways of communicating. And then nurses should be also able to assess patients based on their needs and their family's needs. The last one is that nurses should be able to display effective communication within the interdisciplinary team. So the required materials for this course will be Panopto, which is a video platform that you can easily share, upload videos, and also create for you to upload them to be able to share with the class. And then the required reading is the Academic Journal of Improving Communication Skills throughout the Nephrology Unit. And these are the two required readings that nurses must take, use during the course to be able to complete the course. So on the final week of the course, each student must list 10 things that they have communicated, which is the model sentence that I talked about earlier in my presentation, as well as the critical thinking activity. That is the simulation activity where we will have a mannequin who is on a hospital bed. Basically, it's a patient who is on dialysis, and nurses will simulate the patient with several symptoms, and then nurses are going to be able to work together to come up with a solution to the given scenario, and the scenario will be anything that we throw at the students for them to be able to simulate and practice effective communications, and they'll be able to do this without any worry that they might make a mistake. This is also to teach them how to ensure the safety of themselves and the patient. So my organizational sustainability will have short-term plans, and then long-term plans, resources for implementation. Short-term plans will be like surveys conducted by educators and filled out by the nursing students that have taken the course. There will also be post-course evaluations to determine how effective the course was, and then as well as buy-ins from floor nurses that that those highly impact the ability of our organization and its continued success in providing education for our nursing staff. For the long term, plans, we will be coordinating meetings with the interdisciplinary team and using specific insights from their point of view, and use that as a key factor in identifying necessary enhancements to our program to make the proper changes. Participants will include, for the resources, the participants will include physicians, medical professors, and we will continue to collaborate with other medical professors who share the same style of teaching. This will help us to be able to gain a perspective of the flipped classroom style and its effectiveness. These meetings will help us in the decision-making processes that will enhance the proposed solution. So this is our evaluation plan. As I said, we will be using surveys, post-course evaluations, and then decision-making processes, working with other medical professors, physicians, and helping that to for us to gain a perspective in the flipped classroom style and its effectiveness. The interprofessional participants will be nurses, as I had stated earlier, our nephrologist, physicians, and medical professors, and then which is the collaboration with the medical professors to be able to gain that perspective from everybody's opinion to help us see the effectiveness of the course that these nurses will be taking. So, bridging the gap. What did my capstone project address? My capstone project addressed the gap of effective communication by giving our nurses the chance to participate in a class that specifically targets the ongoing issue in our dialysis centers. My capstone project was also helpful in increasing the knowledge base of nurses regarding the use of effective communication when working with the interdisciplinary team, patients, and patients' families. The importance of educating our nurses, as we all know, education and continuing education is important because policies and procedures change from time to time. It helps to keep our nurses regularly updated on their knowledge and the latest trends in clinical practice, which when nurses know like the latest trends in clinical practice, it promotes patient care excellence and they lower hospitalization rates as well. My approach in using the flipped classroom style of learning is to create a positive learning environment conducive to the different learning styles to make it beneficial for the nurses and other interdisciplinary teammates. So during my days in the WGU master's program, I found that I was able to meet the outcome of being able to construct interprofessional teams on how to communicate, coordinate, collaborate, and consult with other health professionals. This helped them to advance a culture of excellence within our organization. The second outcome I have followed while completing my MSN program at WGU was being able to integrate clinical reasoning with our organization and to be able to keep patients at the center of what we do. We also, I was able to find culturally appropriate strategies to plan, deliver, and evaluate evidence-based practice, which is the effective communication and the flipped classroom style of learning. I believe that without evidence-based practice, I will not have been able to deliver a capstone project that utilizes the standards of practice while at the same time following our organization's policies and procedures. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be in this MSN program at WGU.